One of the things is probably more just housekeeping than anything, but if you've got a salary sacrifice arrangement happening with your employer and all of a sudden the 11.5 or the super guarantee contributions going from 11% to 11.5, you may just need to review those to make sure that doesn't, we should be fine with the cap going from 27.5 to 30. But it can get a little bit complicated when you start to factor in the stage 3 tax cuts as well too, just in terms of your net pay. So I'd say it's a really good opportunity to be able to review all of this to start thinking about what those arrangements look like on the 1st of July.
Welcome to 360 Money Matters, where financial planners Billy and Andrew talk all things financial planning. This podcast aims to increase your knowledge and confidence with all things money. Each week, they will cover topics such as investing, cash flow, budgeting, saving, passive income, debt management, and much more, so you can live a life on your terms without limits.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 360 Money Matters podcast. I'm Billy and I'm joined by my co-host,
Andrew. Bills, here we are back again on another 360 Money Matters podcast.
Andrew, most exciting time of the week when we're doing this, mate. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it, because not only is it a bit of fun for us, but we're bringing some information to our listeners and our viewers. And I reckon this one's going to be pretty good, pretty informative, which is good. And we might talk a little bit about the history of everything that's been going on with this sort of stuff. But Andrew, what are we talking to everyone about today?
So today we're talking about a few changes. So as of the 1st of July, there's going to be some changes around some of the limits and some of the things that you can do within superannuation. So we're going to have a little chat about that and run through what those changes are and how that might impact people.
So we might title this one "All About Super."
Yeah, exactly.
What do you reckon?
Exactly right.
So first cab off the rank, the transfer balance cap. Yeah, sounds pretty sexy.
It does.
You're talking about an amount of 1.9 million.
Yeah.
Pretty decent. Let's talk to everybody about what that looks like, but there are no changes. That's probably just the headline thing. There are no changes to that number.
Yeah.
It did change previously in the past.
Yeah. So it started at $1.6 million and it slowly increased up to $1.9 million. Now, it increases with indexation, but only in $100,000 increments. So this is one of the years where we haven't reached that increment, and so there's no changes to the transfer balance cap.
Yep.
Maybe just taking it back a step in terms of what it actually is. What the transfer balance cap is this is the amount of money that you can have in a superannuation fund and pay no tax on once you're retired over the age of 65. And so over the age of 65, irrespective of whether you're retired, over the age of 60 and retired, or not working. Now, that means that you can have $1.9 million, no tax on capital gains, no tax on income, anything.
No tax on earnings.
No tax on earnings. Anything that's in excess of that. So if you've got more than $1.9 million in a superannuation fund, we'll need to kick it back to your accumulation superannuation fund. And that's where there's a 15% tax rate within that environment. So no changes to the $1.9 million transfer balance cap. There is the talk that's still going on around that $3 million superannuation limit, which in essence will mean that there's going to be additional tax that's paid when you've got more than $3 million, but nothing of that has physically come through legislation yet. So still yet to decide on that.
Yeah, and look, in terms of the 1.9 million, that's a pretty significant number when you think about it.
3.7. Sorry,
well,
3.8.
If you think about it, two members of a couple, you're talking about having 3.8 million in terms of money sitting inside a tax-free environment before you're paying any tax, assuming that you meet those characteristics that we were describing before. Absolutely fantastic. And if you then consider sort of back in the good old days when the balance transfer cap didn't exist, if you were very, very wealthy, you could have whatever you want in there, and basically all of it was tax-free. So this was really designed, I think, for, we'll call it the top end of town essentially, but basically having a line in the sand from the government's perspective saying that superannuation is designed to provide for your retirement income, as opposed to superannuation is a vehicle that we're going to use to pay less tax by some fairly smart planning. So I think, look, in terms of even where it was before, 1.6, if you imagine that's two members of a couple and you've been fortunate enough to grow your superannuation balance, you're talking about $3.2 million, but it's even juicier now at 1.9, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Second one's the concessional contribution. So there's some changes there.
Yeah, so this one's great. I mean, this is something that I always tend to butt my head up against in terms of contributions to superannuation, and almost to the extent where I think about this and go, there almost shouldn't be any caps. Because on one hand, from the government's perspective, you want your population to be able to fund and save up and fund their own retirement. So you're not, we'll call it a burden to the government from an age pension or from an income perspective. So if that's the case, then why is there caps? But anyway, that's probably for another podcast when we beat up the government. But essentially, the contributions cap amount is going from $27,500 to $30,000. So this is, I guess, the main one that most people will know is your super guarantee contribution that your employer is paying in. If you've entered into a salary sacrifice arrangement with your employer as well, that falls under it. And then if you're making contributions that you then claim as a deductible contribution, they're all moving towards that $30,000 limit mark per annum from the 1st of July onwards.
Yep. So basically you can put in $30,000 pre-tax into superannuation from 1 July. Just to be clear on this, when you're looking at your catch-up concessional contributions or your unused contributions for the previous 5 years, the amount that you can do is based off the year that's unused. So if you are looking back and are saying, okay, in the 23-24 financial year, I had some unused concessional contributions, it'll be based on what the cap was in that year. So it's $27,500, not the $30,000. Really simple, easy way to look at it is go back to the ATO portal. They'll physically give you the number.
So through MyGov?
Yeah, through MyGov on the ATO portal, you'll be able to see what your unused concessional contributions have been for previous years to get a more accurate number on that.
Yep. And just on that number, so those catch-up contributions that are available, the limit that the amount that you can have in superannuation has not changed. Where you become eligible to use those. So the line in the sand for that is if you've got unused concessional contributions from previous financial years, if your balance is less than $500,000, you can then use those. If it's above $500,000, you miss out on that. That number hasn't changed.
And that $500,000 is your balance as at 1 July.
Yeah.
So if you've got, $495,000 on the 1st of July and you're looking at making a contribution in that financial year and your balance has increased over the $500,000 over that time, you still can use your catch-up concessional contributions because it's based off the balance as at 1 July.
Yep.
But no changes to
that number. Yep. And just a bit of a reminder more than anything is that the contributions that are available from the 18-19 financial year are going to drop off once we tick over to the new financial year.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at this, we did last week's episode on some tax planning strategies, but if you're looking at this and you want to use those from the 18-19 financial year, you have to do it essentially now because they will drop off and become unavailable down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. Next one's your after tax, so non-concessional contributions to super. That's increasing now from $110,000 in the financial year to $120,000 in the financial year. So had some indexation on that number as well.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, going back to my earlier comments about getting more money into superannuation, and we'll talk about the bring forward rule and stuff in a sec. But we're starting to talk about some decent numbers when it comes to this, which is great. Another $10,000 becomes available. They're big numbers. Don't get me wrong. Just having 120 grand laying around to be able to chuck into super and stuff. But it's great to see that this number is increasing from 110 to 120. Andrew, we might talk about the bring forward opportunity that we've got with people and what that looks like. There's a little bit of timing associated with this as well too. What does that look like?
So your bring forward means that you can look forward and make a contribution in this financial year and nothing for the next 2 financial years. So you're bringing forward 3 years worth of contributions into 1 year. Now, you can bring forward 3 financial years. So you're talking $120,000 times by 3. So you can do $360,000 in after-tax contributions now and then nothing for the next 2 financial years.
Yep.
Complexity, but the thing to note with all of this is, as at the time of this podcast, we're in the 23-24 financial year.
Yep.
23-24 financial year, your non-concessional contribution cap is $110,000. So what you can do is put $110,000, so not utilize the bring forward.
Yep.
$110,000 in this financial year. So that basically takes care of the next, we're talking month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Then you use the bring forward in the next financial year. So after 1 July, $360,000 available. So within the space of a couple of months, you have the ability to put $470,000 into superannuation.
Yeah.
Without any changes to the caps, this would have meant that you were capped at 440.
Yep.
110 and then 330. So it, in essence, means that people can put more money into their superannuation at a more rapid rate.
Yeah, which is great. And, if you've got a decent amount of money and maybe there's 2 members of a couple, maybe you're downsizing an investment property, there's a downsizer contribution. We don't need to get into that, but maybe you've had a windfall or whatever it may be. It's a fairly significant amount of money that you can get into super in a short period of time with some planning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. You think inheritance, Pat's Lotto winners. Your ability to put money into superannuation at a relatively quick period of time, if you're a member of a couple, it's massive, especially as you're planning towards retirement and when you're considering that transfer balance cap of $1.9 million and what that can do from a tax-free income perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Super guarantee contribution. So going from 11% to 11.5% on the 1st of July, which is great. It just means more money in people's retirement savings down the track. Depending on sort of who you are and where you sit in the equation. If you're an employer, maybe you're looking at this going, geez, there's another 0.5% that we have to pay into superannuation. If you're on the receiving end of that, obviously that's a positive thing. But look, all in all, we're starting to see that figure continually climb, where it's going to reach, the maximum that the government has prescribed of 12%.
Yeah. And if you're one of those people that your employment contract is inclusive of superannuation, it actually means that you see less in your pay packet than what you did before it comes in. So,
although we've got the stage 3 tax cuts coming out as well too, so maybe it'll balance it out. I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's one of those things that depending on where you are, depending on who you are, it's either a bit a detriment or it's a benefit. But
I think it's a good thing all up.
All up, it means more people putting more money towards superannuation and having more money in the retirement phase of their life.
Yeah, and ultimately, one of the things is probably more just housekeeping than anything. But if you've got a salary sacrifice arrangement happening with your employer, and all of a sudden the 11.5 or the super guarantee contributions going from 11% to 11.5, you may just need to review those to make sure that doesn't. We should be fine with the cap going from 27.5 to 30, but it can get a little bit complicated when you start to factor in the stage 3 tax cuts as well too, just in terms of your net pay. So I'd say it's a really good opportunity to be able to review all of this to start thinking about what those arrangements look like on the 1st of July.
Yeah, absolutely. Preservation age, Billy. This is what you're sort of not too far away from, but
yes, Andrew, thank you.
Preservation age is now 60 for everyone.
Yay.
Where there was some transition between the age of 57 and 60, and depending on your date of birth.
Yep.
Gone. Yeah, it's gone. So it's now significantly simpler for financial advisors and everyone to know that, okay, age 60 is everyone's preservation age now. So that's when, if you're over the age of 60 and you're no longer working or you've had a change in employment, you now have unrestricted access to your superannuation.
Yep.
And that line in the sand is age 60, rather than having a bit of a moving target.
Yeah, look, the superannuation system is complex, which is good to a certain extent because it's great for us. But in saying that, this just made it more complicated for absolutely everybody involved. So I think, reaching that point in time where it is now 60, it just makes that a little bit simpler for everybody to understand, which is great for I think all involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And then stage 3 tax cuts.
Stage 3 tax cuts, 1st of July.
Is this the point in time that you start ripping on the government bills, or
I might...
or we can keep this strictly informative?
No, you know what? We're recording on a Friday. Let's go for it. So we've got a Labor government in force now, right? The Liberals were the ones who got it across the line. Labor are taking the credit for it. Yeah. The PM and the Treasurer decided to sort of change the mix about how that was sitting. But anyway, we put that aside. And let's go back to it. It'd be interesting enough to see when they were proposing the stage 3 tax cuts, what the Labor government's position was on that. I don't know.
Well, no.
Anyway.
I'm not entirely sure.
But look, we're all going to benefit from the tax cuts, which is great. So it kicks in on 1st of July, which is fantastic, depending on how much money you earn and where you sit in the spectrum of the income and the percentage of tax that you pay. You'll end up getting a different amount of relief, I guess, which is great. And it's a perfect time for this to happen as well too, because the cost of living is impacting and biting everybody. So hopefully this delivers some much needed reprieve to a lot of people and a lot of families across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. So in essence, everyone is going to be receiving some form of tax benefit. So everyone is going to be receiving more in their pay packet than what they otherwise would have been. The point of contention, the point of, debate over the last few months has been that the stage 3 tax cuts were legislated. They had passed through legislation. It was defined as to how it would happen. And at the very last minute, the current government decided to change the goalposts, and they're shifting more money from higher income earners to middle to lower income earners. The budget is still staying the same. So the government is going to earn less tax revenue, and that amount is staying the same. How that's allocated is ultimately what's changing. One of the practical sort of outcomes out of this, and one of the things that I've been discussing with clients is, okay, you've been living off X amount of wage. You're going to be earning, whatever that number is, an extra $100 a fortnight, $300 a fortnight. What do we do with it?
Yep.
It's very easy to have a lifestyle creep. I mean, when you're talking about numbers like that, it's very easy to just spend that little bit of extra money. But what does that mean? Do we now, put that money towards investment? Do we put that money towards salary sacrifice for super? Does this open up some borrowing capacity in order to be able to, where you were able to borrow X amount, you can now borrow Y? I mean, actually look at what the implications are and make a rational decision around what implications it has for you and what you ultimately want to do with it, rather than just let that money, flow in and out and you don't know where it's gone. Make some rational decision.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point, because there's an opportunity available here that if you can spend a little bit of time planning that and then having a little bit of discipline around what that looks like, I think you can take that, let's call it a small amount, and it varies for everybody depending on your circumstances, but you can take that small amount and do something with it. And, if you do it right, it can have a substantial difference. And the truth is, you're not going to feel it.
Yeah.
Different story if you need that money to I guess, loosen the noose around your neck if you're experiencing some cash flow pressure because the cost of living is so high. But, there's a really big opportunity here, I think, to be able to get that and say, okay, I was here in June. We're now here in July. Let's pretend that we didn't get that. What do we do with that difference? And away we go. And I think a really good plug for us is talk to your advisor, get some advice, because it's easy to absorb, but you don't want to miss and have your lifestyle creep like you were suggesting. But you don't want to miss this opportunity because it doesn't happen too often.
Absolutely. And make the decision that's right for you. I mean, for us, there's sometimes where you play bad cop, there's sometimes where you play good cop. And maybe this is one of those times where you're like, you know what? There's some extra money that's sitting around. Let's put that towards the holiday fund.
Yeah.
We're all experiencing cash flow pressure. A lot of people are delaying going on holidays, not going on overseas trips, not doing any of that stuff. Maybe take that money and say, you know what? let's put that towards the holiday account. And it means that where we might have been going on a holiday once every 3 years, we can now do it once every, year and a half or two. But all that I'm an advocate for is not, just, hey, grow your wealth, grow your wealth, grow your wealth. It's grow your wealth, absolutely, but make rational decisions around what you're doing with your money. Make sure that what you're doing with it is actually what you want to do with it, rather than just, I've got some extra money coming in, and it means that, I bought an extra few coffees, or I bought an extra top, and I don't know where the money's gone. Like, it's really easy.
Yeah, yep, 100%.
Just make rational decisions with what you actually want to do.
No, 100%. Andrew, well said, well summarised. I think that was a good recap of what we're looking at for the new financial year in terms of superannuation. We threw some stuff in there around the stage 3 tax cuts as well too. But I think the call out is with the stage 3 tax cuts, get some advice around that, because there is an opportunity, and also looking forward for the next year, getting some advice around some of the changes that are happening and how can that improve your situation if you take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Bills, thanks again. Always good to jump on another podcast. If you got some value out of that one, like, subscribe, and look forward to catching you on the next podcast.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions on what we talked about, or would like to have a chat about your money journey, visit us at 360fs.com.au.
Just a reminder to our listeners that the information contained in this podcast is general in nature and is not intended as personal recommendations for the audience. Please consider whether the information suits your circumstances before acting on it. This information is provided by Billy Amaritis and Andrew Nicolou of 360 Financial Strategists Proprietary Limited, authorised representatives and credit representatives of AMP Financial Planning.